The sleek mercenary ship Outcasts' Pride drifted through the purple nebula, its battle-scarred hull telling stories of countless missions. Inside the ship's dimly lit command center, Captain Red stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gray skin reflecting the soft glow of holographic displays. The latest mission report floated before him, and the numbers weren't good. 3 dead, 2 critically wounded, he muttered, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly in distress. Half our combat team gone in one mission. His second-in-command, Blue, stepped forward. Unlike most of their species who preferred the clean, sterile environments of the Galactic Alliance ships, Blue wore rough combat armor covered in tribal markings. "The client paid us anyway. Said we got the job done better than any Alliance team could have. Getting the job done isn't enough if we can't keep our people alive," Red replied, closing the report with a wave of his hand. "We need to rebuild the team." The ship's communication array suddenly lit up with an incoming transmission. Red recognized the elegant insignia of the Galactic Alliance Military Command. With a sigh, he accepted the call. Admiral White's hologram appeared, his perfectly groomed appearance and pristine uniform a stark contrast to Red's battle-worn attire. "Captain Red," the Admiral spoke, his tone dripping with barely concealed disdain. "I heard about your recent difficulties." "News travels fast," Red replied flatly. "What do you want, Admiral?" "Oh, merely to offer some friendly advice," White said, his lips curling into a smirk. "Perhaps it's time to admit that your unconventional methods aren't working. The Alliance always welcomes back those who wish to follow proper protocols." Blue stepped forward, his scared face clearly visible in the hologram. "Our methods get results. When your clean, proper protocols fail, who do you call?" "The Outcasts." "Ah yes, your notorious whatever-it-takes approach." White sneered. "How primitive. You're barely better than those savage humans we discovered last cycle." Red's antenna twitched, a sign of sudden interest that he quickly tried to hide. The humans. The Alliance had made contact with Earth just 6 cycles ago and had quickly dismissed them as primitives. Their reliance on physical combat, their insistence on carrying primitive projectile weapons as backups, their brutal training methods, all of it had horrified the Alliance's sensibilities. "Perhaps," Red said slowly, "that's exactly what we need." Admiral White's hologram flickered as he laughed. "You can't be serious. Those barbarians. They still train in hand-to-hand combat like animals. They deliberately practice fighting without their technology. And when was the last time an Alliance team succeeded in a mission after their primary systems were compromised?" Red challenged. The Admiral's expression hardened. "If you're so desperate to work with savages, be my guest. It will only prove what everyone already knows. You're no better than the primitives you surround yourself with." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the command center in silence. Blue turned to his captain. "You're not really considering recruiting humans, are you?" Red walked to the main viewport, watching the swirling colors of the nebula. "The Alliance calls us outcasts because we do what's necessary. We use explosive devices when we could use clean energy weapons. We breach hulls instead of hacking airlocks. We get our hands dirty." He turned back to Blue, his expression determined. "And we survive. We succeed. Maybe it's time we learned from others who do the same." "The crew won't like it," Blue warned. "The crew wants to live," Red countered. "Set a course for Earth. If the Alliance wants to mock us by comparing us to humans, let's see what these savages can really do." As the Outcasts' Pride's engines hummed to life, Red smiled. The Alliance had meant to insult him by comparing his team to humans. Instead, they might have just shown him exactly what his crew needed to become truly unstoppable. Sometimes, he thought, it takes outcasts to recognize the value in those others dismiss. The United Military Command building stood tall against Earth's blue sky, a stark contrast to the sleek curves of the Outcasts' Pride, now parked on the landing pad. Captain Red and Blue walked through security, drawing curious stares from human personnel. Their gray skin and antennae marked them as clearly different from the usual visitors. They still use human guards instead of automated systems, Blue muttered, noting the armed soldiers at each checkpoint. Primitive. Maybe, Red replied quietly. But notice how none of those guards have taken their eyes off us, even with all their scanning technology. A tall, muscular human in a dark uniform approached them. His face bore a long scar across his right cheek, and his stance spoke of someone ready for action at any moment. Captain Red, I'm Major Stone. Welcome to Earth. Red noticed how the Major moved. Balanced, controlled, like a predator. Different from the stiff, proper Alliance officers he was used to. Major, thank you for agreeing to meet us. Not every day we get mercenaries asking to recruit Earth's soldiers, Stone said, leading them down a corridor. Especially not after the Alliance made it clear they think we're, what was the word? Savages. The Alliance, Red said carefully, doesn't always recognize valuable traits when they see them. Stone's laugh was sharp, diplomatic way of putting it. Come on, we're running combat trials right now. You can see what these savages can do. They entered an observation room overlooking a massive training facility. Below, teams of human soldiers moved through a complex obstacle course. What caught Red's attention wasn't their speed or strength. It was how they handled equipment failures. When their energy rifles suddenly powered down, not a single soldier froze. They instantly switched to backup weapons, some modern, some surprisingly ancient in design. When communications went dark, they shifted to hand signals without missing a beat. You deliberately sabotage their equipment? Blue asked, antenna twitching with interest. Every training run, Stone confirmed. In the real world, technology fails. We make sure our people are ready when it does. He pressed a button on the console. Watch this next part. The facility's lights went out. Environmental systems shut down. In the darkness below, the soldiers kept moving, kept fighting. They adapted to every new challenge thrown at them, using everything from high-tech gear to simple tools. Your troops, Red said slowly, train to fight in total system failure conditions. We train to fight in any conditions, Stone corrected. The Alliance called us primitive because we still teach hand-to-hand combat. But you know what? You can't hack a knife. Can't jam a punch. Blue stepped closer to the window. Our last mission. We lost half our team when our primary systems were compromised. We had no backup plan. There's always a backup plan, Stone said firmly. Sometimes it's high-tech, sometimes it's a rock. Whatever works. Red watched as the training session ended. The soldiers below were tired but alert, immediately checking their gear and discussing the exercise. No complaints about the sabotaged equipment, no excuses about unfair conditions. Major Stone, Red said, turning to face the human. I'd like to propose a deal. We need soldiers who can think beyond technology, who can adapt when everything goes wrong. You want to prove that humanity's methods have value in modern combat. Stone's expression remained neutral, but his eyes showed interest. What exactly are you suggesting? Let me recruit a small team of your Special Forces operators. We'll show the galaxy what happens when you combine advanced technology with primitive survival skills. And what do we get out of it? Red smiled. Besides proving the Alliance wrong, your people get real combat experience with alien tech and tactics, and a chance to show everyone that being called primitive isn't an insult, it's an advantage. Stone considered for a moment, then extended his hand. A human gesture of agreement. You've got a deal, Captain. Just remember, you wanted savages. You're going to get them. As Red clasped the Major's hand, he couldn't help but think that the Alliance's mockery might have led him to exactly what his team needed, warriors who were ready for anything, whether it involved advanced technology or primitive strength. Sometimes, he realized, the best soldiers were the ones who remembered their savage roots. The training deck of the Outcasts' Pride echoed with the sound of flesh meeting flesh. A group of alien crew members watched in fascination and horror as Major Stone demonstrated hand-to-hand combat techniques with his team of 5 human Special Forces operators. "This is barbaric," muttered Green, the ship's technology specialist, as she watched one of the humans throw another to the padded deck. "We have neural training programs for combat scenarios." "Programs can be hacked," replied Rock, one of the human operators, helping his teammate up. "Your muscles can't." Captain Red stood at the edge of the training area, observing the session with Blue. It had been 2 weeks since they'd brought the humans aboard, and the culture clash was evident. The humans insisted on daily physical training, carried primitive backup weapons, and spent hours practicing combat moves that most Alliance species had abandoned centuries ago. "They sweat," Blue said, wrinkling his nose, "actually produce bodily fluids during exercise." "They also haven't complained once about our unpredictable mission schedule," Red pointed out, "unlike some of our crew." An alarm suddenly blared through the ship. "Captain to Command Center," the ship's AI announced. "Priority mission alert." Minutes later, Red stood before his mixed crew, reviewing the emergency contract. A private research station had gone dark, with signs of hostile takeover. The client wanted it cleared as quickly as possible. "Standard sweep and clear," Red announced. "We go in, remove any hostiles, secure the station." "We should do it the Alliance way," Green suggested. "Hack their systems, shut down life support in occupied sections, clean and efficient." Stone stepped forward. "And if they have counter-hackers? Tech dampeners? We need a backup plan." "We do this properly," Green insisted, "not like savages." 4 hours later, the proper plan lay in ruins. The Outcasts' Pride docked with the research station, only to find their advanced hacking tools useless against military-grade countermeasures. The team was stuck in the docking bay, their energy weapons disabled by station defenses. "Well," Stone said, pulling out what looked like a primitive metal tube from his pack. "Time for Plan B." "What is that?" Green asked, staring at the device. "Thermite breaching charge. Old school. No electronics." Stone grinned. "Sometimes the savage solution is the smart solution." Red watched as the humans took charge. They distributed backup weapons, simple projectile guns, sturdy metal batons, and what they called flashbang grenades. Primitive tools, but immune to the station's defensive systems. "This is how we did it before fancy energy weapons," Rock explained, showing the alien crew how to use the simple but effective tools. No computers, no problems. The next hour changed everything. The human operators led the way, using their primitive weapons and tactics to systematically clear the station. When electronic door locks failed, they used breaching charges. When communications went down, they used hand signals. When faced with armed resistance, they employed close combat techniques that no neural program could have prepared for. By the time they reached the station's control room, even Green had to admit the effectiveness of the human methods. The hostile forces, totally dependent on their electronic countermeasures, never stood a chance against determined warriors willing to get their hands dirty. "Mission accomplished," Red announced, surveying the secured station. "Minimal casualties, all objectives achieved." Stone wiped sweat from his forehead, holstering his backup weapon. "Still think we're too primitive." Green looked at her disabled energy rifle, then at the simple but effective tools the humans had used. Perhaps being primitive has its advantages." "Not primitive," Red corrected. "Prepared." The Alliance forgot that technology can fail. The humans never did. As they headed back to their ship, Red noticed something had changed. His alien crew members were asking the humans questions, showing interest in their training methods. Some were even practicing the hand-to-hand moves they'd seen earlier. Sometimes, he thought, it takes a failure to appreciate a different way of thinking. The humans weren't advanced by Alliance standards, but they were survivors. And in Red's line of work, survival was what mattered most. Maybe it was time for everyone to embrace their inner savage. 1 month after the research station mission, the Outcasts' Pride looked very different. The once pristine training deck now featured rough obstacle courses built from cargo containers. The weapon racks held both energy rifles and what the humans called reliable backups. Even the ship's mess hall had changed, with protein-rich meals replacing the standard nutrient solutions. Captain Red stood in the doorway of the training deck, watching Green, once the biggest critic of human methods, practicing hand-to-hand combat with Rock. The alien's movements were still stiff, but she was learning. "Your balance is improving," Rock said, helping Green up after a throw. "Remember, when technology fails, your body is your best weapon. And when your body is tired," Green replied, demonstrating a joint lock she'd learned, "technology is your best friend." Blue approached Red, holding a modified energy rifle. "The humans helped us redesign our weapons. Simple mechanical triggers as backup, in case the smart systems fail. Not elegant, but it works," Red finished. "Like everything they've shown us." In another corner of the deck, Stone worked with alien crew members on what he called improvised tools. They learned to turn simple ship parts into useful implements. A broken panel became a shield. A maintenance tool became a weapon. The Alliance would be horrified. Blue commented, watching an alien crew member practice with a metal staff. "They'd say we're going backward." "No," Stone said, joining them. "You're going forward, just on a different path. Speaking of which, Captain, my team has been studying your ship's systems." Red's antenna perked up with interest. "Oh, your tech is advanced, but fragile. No redundancy. We got some ideas for improvement, if you're willing to get a little primitive with your engineering." Over the next few hours, Stone's team presented their suggestions. Mechanical backup systems for crucial components, emergency protocols that didn't rely on AI, simple solutions to complex problems. "It's not pretty," one of the human operators explained, pointing to a diagram. "But it gives you options when things go wrong. And in our experience, things always go wrong." Red watched as his crew engaged with the ideas, offering their own suggestions, combining advanced alien knowledge with practical human experience. The humans, in turn, absorbed everything they could about the ship's technology. They learned fast, Blue noted, watching a human operator skillfully repair a complex energy conduit. "They have to," Red replied. "Their whole history is about adapting or dying. The Alliance sees it as primitive. I see it as practical." The ship's AI interrupted their discussion. "Captain, incoming priority message from the Alliance Military Command." Admiral White's hologram appeared, his expression as disdainful as ever. "Captain Red, I've received disturbing reports about your recent activities. Reports of your crew engaging in physical combat training, modifying approved equipment, installing primitive backup systems, all of which helped us complete our last 6 missions without casualties." Red responded calmly. "This is not the proper way. Proper doesn't keep my crew alive." Red interrupted. "Results do. Our success rate has doubled since integrating human methods with our technology." The Admiral's face tightened. "You're becoming as savage as they are." Stone stepped into view of the hologram, his scared face stern. "Savage enough to succeed where proper methods fail. Admiral, maybe that's worth thinking about." After the Admiral cut the transmission in anger, Red turned to his mixed crew. Aliens and humans, advanced technology, and primitive backup plans, elegant solutions, and brutal efficiency. They weren't outcasts anymore. They were something new. "The Alliance thinks we're going backward," Red addressed the crew. "But look around. Every person here can now handle both high-tech and no-tech situations. We're not becoming primitive. We're becoming unstoppable." Stone nodded in agreement. "The best warrior isn't the one with the fanciest weapon. It's the one who can fight with anything or nothing." As Red watched his crew return to their training, humans and aliens learning from each other, growing stronger together, he knew they'd found something the Alliance had forgotten long ago. True adaptability. Sometimes the future lies in remembering the past. The Outcasts' Pride's command center was silent as Captain Red reviewed the contract details floating in the holographic display. Even Stone, usually ready with a confident comment, stood quietly as he studied the mission parameters. "This has to be a joke," Blue said finally. "The Crystal Station. 3 elite mercenary teams have already failed. 2 were completely wiped out. The Alliance's best special operations team couldn't even dock with the station." Green added, "The defense systems are unlike anything we've seen." The Crystal Station hung in space like a massive jewel, its surface gleaming with energy shields. Once a luxury resort for the galaxy's wealthiest beings, it had been taken over by a sophisticated criminal organization. They'd turned the station's automated defense systems into a deadly barrier that had defeated every attempt to retake it. "The client is offering triple our usual rate," Red noted. "They're desperate." Stone stepped closer to the hologram, his eyes narrowing. "Those other teams, they all tried to beat the station's technology with better technology, right?" "Of course," Green replied. "It's a technical problem. It needs a technical solution." Stone smiled. "No, it needs a human solution." 2 days later, the Outcasts' pride approached the Crystal Station. Unlike previous teams that had tried to hack their way in or overwhelm the defenses, they were running dark. No active systems, no energy signatures. "This is insane," Green whispered from her station. "We're flying blind." "Not blind," Rock corrected, pointing to the simple optical telescope they'd mounted. "Just old school." The ship drifted toward the station, powered only by momentum and minimal maneuvering thrusters. The station's automated defenses, programmed to detect energy signatures and electronic attacks, ignored them completely. "Sometimes," Stone said quietly, "the best way to beat advanced technology is to use no technology at all." They reached the station's hull without being detected. The human operators, wearing simple mechanical space suits rather than modern ones, exited the ship. They carried basic tools and weapons, no electronics that could be detected or disabled. "Remember your training," Stone's voice came through the simple radio link. "When we breach, they'll be depending on their tech. We'll depend on ourselves." The humans planted their primitive breaching charges, simple chemical explosives that needed no electronic detonators. Inside the ship, the alien crew prepared for their part, wearing the modified combat gear they trained with for months. The breach was swift and brutal. The station's defenders, relying on automated security systems and energy weapons, weren't prepared for attackers who fought with simple projectile weapons and hand-to-hand combat. Room by room, section by section, the combined human-alien team pushed forward. "They're trying to lock down the section." A defender's panicked voice echoed through captured communications. "Why aren't their weapons shutting down? Why can't we stop them?" Red led his team through the chaos, watching his crew put their months of training to use. When energy weapons failed, they switched to backups without hesitation. When electronic locks engaged, they used mechanical bypasses. When communications were jammed, they used hand signals. The final push to the control room proved why the mixed team had succeeded where others failed. The defenders activated a full electronic warfare suite, expecting to disable their attackers. Instead, they found themselves facing warriors who could fight just as effectively without technology. "Impossible," the criminal leader gasped as Stone and Red burst into the control room. "You're using primitive weapons, primitive tactics, primitive," Red asked as his team secured the room. "No, we're using everything. That's what makes us unstoppable." Hours later, as Alliance security forces finally boarded the now-secured station, Admiral White arrived to find Red's team conducting a thorough sweep of the facility. Humans and aliens worked together seamlessly, using both advanced technology and simple tools. "How?" the Admiral demanded. "How did you succeed where our best teams failed?" Stone answered, holding up his simple projectile weapon in one hand and an energy rifle in the other. "Because we didn't try to prove which way was better. We used both. Sometimes the old ways work best. Sometimes the new ways do. The trick is knowing when to use each." Red watched his crew with pride. They weren't outcasts anymore. They were pioneers. Sometimes the best way forward is to remember what you've left behind. News of the Crystal Station mission spread quickly through the galaxy. The Outcasts' Pride's landing bay, once empty except for supply ships, now hosted visitors from across the Alliance. Mercenary leaders, military commanders, and even private security firms came to learn about the team that had succeeded where elite forces had failed. Captain Red stood on the observation deck, watching as Stone demonstrated combat techniques to a group of Alliance Special Forces commanders. Their expressions had shifted from disgust to fascination as they watched the human operator disarm an opponent using purely physical techniques. 6 months ago, they called us savages, Blue said, joining his captain. Now they're taking notes. Below, Green was explaining their modified weapons to another group. See this mechanical trigger system. Simple, but it works even under complete electronic warfare conditions. We learned that from our human teammates. The Alliance Military Command has sent another request, the ship's AI announced. They want to establish a formal training program. Red's antenna twitched with amusement. Times change quickly. Admiral White must be furious. Actually, a familiar voice said from behind them, he's been reassigned. They turned to find Admiral Black, the new head of Alliance military operations, walking toward them. Unlike his predecessor, his uniform showed signs of actual field use. The Crystal Station mission proved something we've forgotten, Black continued. Technology is a tool, not a crutch. Your team's success has forced us to reevaluate our entire approach to combat training. On the training deck, Rock was demonstrating how to turn common ship parts into defensive tools. Alliance officers, who once would have sneered at such primitive methods, were practicing the techniques with genuine interest. We've received 16 new contract offers this morning, Blue reported, checking his datapad. All high-priority missions. They're specifically requesting our human-alien combined tactics. Red watched as Stone corrected an alien officer's stance during hand-to-hand practice. The humans never gave up their basic combat skills, even as they advanced. The Alliance forgot that the body is the first weapon, and the mind is the best tool. That's why I'm here, Admiral Black said. The Alliance Council has approved a new combat training initiative. We want your team to help design it. A program that combines advanced technology with traditional methods. A small crowd had gathered around one of the weapon racks, where Rock was explaining their philosophy. High-tech, low-tech, no-tech. A good warrior is ready for all of them. Because in real combat, you don't get to choose what tools you'll have. You have to be ready to use anything or nothing. The Admiral gestured to the training deck. Look at them. Species that would never have worked together, learning from each other. The humans aren't trying to prove their way is better, and your crew isn't clinging to pure technology anymore. They're creating something new. Red nodded. That's what happens when you stop worrying about what's primitive and what's advanced. You find what works. Later that day, after the visitors had left, Red called his crew together. Humans and aliens stood side by side, no longer separated by their differences. The Alliance has officially requested that we establish a permanent training facility, he announced. They want us to teach other teams what we've learned, not just the tactics, but the philosophy. Stone stepped forward. They're finally understanding that being called primitive isn't an insult. It means we remember our foundations. We build on them, not abandon them. We're not outcasts anymore, Green added, standing proudly beside her human teammates. We're teachers. Red looked at his crew, once divided by their differences, now united by them. The humans had taught them to remember their basic strengths, while they had helped the humans master advanced technology. Together, they had created something unique. The galaxy called us primitives, Red said. Now they're calling us pioneers. Remember this moment. It's not just a victory for us. It's a lesson for everyone. True strength comes from embracing all ways of thinking, not just the ones that seem advanced. Sometimes, he thought, The greatest progress comes from remembering where you started. 6 months after establishing the Joint Combat Training Facility on a remote Alliance space station, Captain Red found himself facing a crisis he never expected. The massive viewing screen in the facility's command center showed a terrifying sight. A swarm of unknown vessels emerging from a spatial rift, immune to Alliance weapons. 3 outer colonies already dark. Admiral Black reported, his hologram flickering with interference. Our weapons barely scratched their shields. Conventional tactics are useless. Around the command center stood representatives from every major force in the galaxy. Alliance commanders, mercenary leaders, and independent captains. All of them watching as standard military vessels, armed with the most advanced technology, failed to stop the invasion. Their technology is beyond anything we've seen, an Alliance scientist reported. They're adapting to every countermeasure we deploy. Stone stepped forward, studying the tactical display. Then we stop trying to beat their technology. We go basic. We go primitive. Red's antenna twitched with understanding. Like the Crystal Station mission. Sometimes the old ways work when the new ones fail. The next hours were a flurry of activity. The training facility, once mocked as a place where savages taught outdated methods, became the galaxy's last hope. Teams of humans and aliens worked together, preparing for a different kind of battle. Physical breaching charges instead of electronic ones, Rock instructed a group of Alliance troops. Simple projectile weapons as backups. They can't adapt to what isn't advanced enough to adapt to. Green, now a senior instructor, led another group. Your body is your constant weapon. Your mind is your best defense. When everything else fails, these remain. The counterattack launched within 24 hours. The combined fleet approached the alien swarm using minimal technology. Basic thrusters, optical targeting, mechanical systems. Just as the Crystal Station hadn't detected their low-tech approach, the advanced alien vessels struggled to track ships running on such simple systems. They're expecting complex electronic warfare, Red transmitted to the fleet. Give them something their advanced sensors can't understand. Nothing. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. Alliance ships, stripped down to basic systems, slipped through the alien defenses. Boarding teams, using physical tools and simple weapons, breached hulls that had repelled energy weapons. Human combat techniques, once dismissed as primitive, proved devastating in close-quarter fights. They don't know how to fight without their technology. Stone's voice crackled through simple radio channels. Just like the Alliance used to be, that's their weakness. The alien swarm, for all its advanced technology, had no answer for warriors who could fight with anything or nothing. Ship by ship, sector by sector, the combined forces pushed them back. Hours later, as the last alien vessels retreated through their spatial rift, the command center erupted in celebration. Red watched as humans and aliens embraced, all distinction between primitive and advanced forgotten in their victory. Admiral Black's hologram reappeared. The Alliance Council has reached a unanimous decision. The Joint Combat Training Program will become mandatory for all military and security forces. What you've created here, it's saved us all. Red looked at Stone, who stood grinning beside him. Not bad for a bunch of savages and outcasts. You know what's funny? Stone replied. The aliens thought their advanced technology made them superior. The Alliance used to think the same thing. Both of them forgot the most basic lesson of survival. Which is? Green asked, joining them. The strongest warrior isn't the one with the best weapon. Stone said. It's the one who can fight without it. Later, as Red stood in the facility's observation dome, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy, all carrying new recruits eager to learn, he reflected on their journey. From outcasts to instructors, from mockery to respect, from division to unity. Ready for another training cycle, Captain? Blue asked, checking the roster of arriving students. Red watched as a group of Alliance officials, once so proud of their technological superiority, practiced hand-to-hand combat with human instructors. Nearby, human recruits learn to operate advanced alien systems from their extraterrestrial teammates. "You know what we really teach here," Red said finally. "Not just combat techniques or survival skills. We teach them to remember. Remember their roots. Remember their strengths. Remember that progress doesn't mean forgetting what worked before." Sometimes, he thought, the greatest wisdom is knowing that every way has value, primitive or advanced, old or new. In the end, survival depends not on choosing one way over another, but on mastering them all. The Outcasts had become teachers, and their lesson had saved the galaxy.